everybody, Dr. G here, and today is our final task of looking at the Titanic analysis. We are going to focus on logistic regression using Python today. And why are we going to be using logistic regression? Because we're looking at survival, which is a binary, or yes or no, I did survive. In this case, we are going to be, logistic regression gives us the coefficients that tells us the log odds of a specific event happening. In this case, are you going to survive or not? For instance, with our model, we can explore things like the odds of people, the survival change from people in one ticket class to the other. So the coefficients that we look at will represent the log odds. The further the coefficient is from 0, the more influential it is. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is go into our worksheet that we're going to be looking at here. We have the Data Analysis Titanic Survivors Logistic Regression worksheet that you're going to be working through. You'll notice that I have the output in mind. Yours will be blank because I'm going to want you to copy and paste the output into yours. So we have this. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make sure that you're running the data in Python. We've already done this in the correlation show, so you should be pretty familiar with that. So what I want you to do is to make sure you know where that Titanic file is that you're going to be using, the file path. So that said, I have Jupyter up and running here, Anaconda, Python. And what I've done is I've opened up a new instance, or kernel as it's called, and you can put your first initial last name, Titanic Logistic Regression, and that's what you're going to need to do to be able to identify where this is parked in your Jupyter notebook. So the first thing I want you to do is remember this is where our input data goes. So let's take a look at our worksheet again. What I've done here, I want you to make sure that you know where that file is. But first of all, we are going to load in our library like we did with correlation. So we're going to, Panda is a library with lots of amazing databases in it. So we're going to paste that right here and run. Again, if it's going to give you another input box, you know that those libraries have loaded well. So the next thing, we're going to go back to the worksheet, and this time I want us to explore a list of passengers and their ticket classes, just so we can kind of take a look here at the file. Make sure, this is really important, make sure that your file path is within these quotes. So it has to be exactly as it looks here with your file name. Now we're going to go back into our notebook and we're going to run it. And here you can see that it's giving us a small list. We could go through the whole thing if we wanted to, but it's going to give us a list of the survivors and all of these different variables that we're looking at. So we've explored that. And you can see here that survived is a 1 and not survived is a 0, just as we have decided to do to code that in our code book that we did earlier on. All right, now that you can see that the data is populating just fine, everything looks good, let's work on our analysis. Go back to your worksheet. We're going to look at our preliminary analysis. So the first thing we want to do is we want to answer the question, does the initial count show a difference in survival rates between ticket classes? So we can do that count plot, of which we just did, and this will allow you to, if you wanted to go in there, output it to Excel, you could see what that count is. The next thing we want to do is we're going to run our logistic regression. And the logistic, it's time to create a prediction based on whether they lived or they died based on ticket class. So I'll let you decide what your prediction is going to be. That's your hypotheses. I'm going to plug this in, paste it right into the notebook. And that has successfully loaded in the model. The next thing that we are going to do is look at the coefficients. So logistic regression gives us the coefficients that tell us the log odds of our prediction happening. In this case, did they live or survive based on class? So we're going to paste that in and run it. And you'll see here, our coefficients came out for us right there. So let's take a look at the coefficients. So the coefficients, we have a negative 0.58 to a negative 1.60. So what does that mean? These values represent the change in the log odds of that dependent variable for 1 unit of change in the predictor variable. So in this case, our predictors are the ticket class after 1 hot encoding. So likely corresponding to the second or the third class. So let's look at that. The coefficient of negative 0.583 for the second class implies that being in the second class as opposed to the first class, which serves as a reference due to the 1 hot encoding, decreases the log odds of survival by 0.583. So in other words, passengers in the second class are less likely to survive than those in the first class. So now the coefficient, the negative 1.60933 for the third class is even lower. So that would mean that passengers in the third class have a much lower log odds of surviving compared to those in the first class. So that's how you read the coefficients. Now let's go back into our model here. And I want us to evaluate how well our model does in making those predictions. So we are going to do what is called a confusion matrix. So copy that code, paste it into Python and run it. So let me point out the numbers here. So right here are our predictors. So these are our passengers. And right here, the first set is that 469, we call these true negatives, meaning 469 passengers were correctly predicted not to survive. And this is out of the 891 total passengers. Next, these are what we call false positives. So 80 passengers were incorrectly predicted to survive. Okay, so next we've got the second set here. So we've got 206 false negatives of 206 passengers were incorrectly predicted not to survive, and 136 true positives. So 136 passengers were correctly predicted to survive. Okay, so what does all this mean? So those are the numbers you're looking for. And what I want to show, remember 0 here is they did not survive. 1 is they survived. So let's look at these columns in the confusion matrix. The precision column is of all the passengers the model predicted to survive. Only 63% actually did. So this is the prediction. And then from the recall standpoint, or we also call this sensitivity, of all the passengers who actually survived, again, we're in the 1 column here, 40% or 0.4 of the model were actually coded correctly. So then we go to what is called the F1 score. The F1 score provides a balance between the precision and the recall. So that said, what it suggests is that the model is more accurate in predicting non-survivors, those up here, 77, versus survivors, which is only 49. So in looking at all of this, what is this telling us? So the accuracy overall is that the model correctly predicted the survival rate of 68%. So you have to kind of look at this and wonder, the logistic regression model suggests that the ticket class did play a significant role in the survival of the Titanic. Specifically, passengers in the first class had higher likelihood of survival than those in the third class. But what we have to keep in mind here when we model out our prediction is that it has a relatively high accuracy of 68%. But you think if you're going to live or die, is that a good enough prediction for you to make, or would you put some more eggs in your basket? So its ability to predict survivals with recall of 40% and an F1 score of 49% kind of seems like there's room for improvement. Maybe there are some additional predictor variables that we would want to include in our model. So that said, what I want you to do is when you go through this, I want you to go exactly what we talked about here. Look at the coefficients for first and second class. What's your prediction or interpretation of this socio and economic question? What are the differences in the survival rate based on class? Did the ticket class matter or not? Then go through what I just did. Look at those numbers in the confusion matrix. How many were true negative, false positive, false negative, and true positive? So that's the end of our Titanic exercise. I'm really excited that we made it through. Just a reminder, when you turn in your assignment uploaded into Canvas, make sure you have all three worksheets, the descriptives, the correlation, and the logistic regression. I also want the Excel file from the pivot tables that you did with the descriptive analysis. So that's 4 pieces of information you're going to have, and I'm really looking forward to translating some of this code and data into Python with your research surveys that you have out in the field. So take care and happy number crunching, everyone.